Okay, welcome. Good evening. Ready to go. Okay, tonight's class was dedicated by Moshe and Rachel Anatian. This is in honor of Mrs. Anatian's mother. Yortzeit is, I think, tomorrow night. Chayesara Bas Reb Dov Ber. May her neshama have a very great aliyah to the greatest of heights. May she channel lots of brachas to the Anatian family. For only good, mazel, and only great things. Thank you so much. The shir was also dedicated for Refuah Shalema for Aaron ben Chaya Tzippa, who needs a Refuah Shalema. He was in a car accident yesterday. May Hashem give him a complete, total, miraculous healing. Lo yeroshim klal o klal. There shouldn't be any trace left over at all. Yisroel. Okay, thank you for coming. So let's see what's going to happen here tonight. I've been doing a little bit of traveling, so my mind is a little mished, but with Hashem's help, everything is going to work out really well. Okay. This week is Parshas Vayechi, Shabbos Parshas Chazak. We finished reading the Torah, and the Torah tells us about the last days of Yaakov Avinu, and he blesses his children, and then it tells us about the passing of Yaakov. Yaakov Avinu's passing. And the pasuk says, "Vayechal Yaakov letzaves hizbanav." Perek Mem Tes pasuk Lamed Gimel. Yaakov completed giving his last instructions for his sons. Vayesav Raglav, he gathered in his feet, Elamita, to the bed. Vayigva, and he expired. Vayasev ela'amav, and he was gathered into his people. So Rashi comments on the words Vayigva Vayasev Umisa loy nemra boy. By Yaakov Avinu, it doesn't mention any death. Va'amar Rabbi Seinu Zal, our sages said, Yaakov Avinu loy meis, that Yaakov Avinu never died. Chazal. Rashi doesn't give much interpretation on this. Rashi quotes it as it is. It seems like Rashi seems to be accepting this Maimer Chazal, this statement of our sages, in a very literal sense, that Yaakov Avinu never died. Even though the Torah talks about a burial, and the Torah talks about an embalmment, that they embalmed his body, and the Torah talks about a eulogy and a crying and a whole big levaya and a whole... Rashi tells you, Yaakov never died. Rashi is not philosophical. Rashi is not expecting that you will have great minds that will interpret his words, because Rashi in Chumash is writing in a very simplistic level. So if he's writing that Yaakov didn't die, he means it in the literal sense that Yaakov never died. Now, where is Rashi taking this from? This usually when Rashi interprets something, Rashi takes it from the Chumash. In this case, Rashi says specifically that I'm taking it from the sages. Va'omer Rabbi Seinu Zal, our sages says Yaakov Avinu loy meis. So this is a Gemara Masechtas Tainis. It's a passage in the Talmud Masechtas Tainis. Let me grab you the Gemara. The Gemara says in Masechtas Tainis. I left that. So the Gemara says in Masechtas Tainis, Daf Hey. Now, by the way, I discussed this, I think 2 years ago in a shir, this concept. It's a very confusing concept, and there's so much to be learned about it. So therefore, I decided to revisit the subject on the idea that there are tzaddikim who don't die. And the fact that there is physical evidence to their death does not change the fact that they didn't die. And particularly, it says so by a few tzaddikim, by Yaakov Avinu, the strongest by Yaakov, by Moshe Rabbeinu, it says loy meis, he didn't die. And we also know, for example, by David HaMelech, we say David HaMelech Yisroel Chai V'Kayam. In general, we say about all tzaddikim, about all righteous people, tzaddikim af b'misasam kruyim chayim, that even in their death, they're called living. The reason I'm bringing up the subject is because today's days we have Chassidim that are very deeply attached to a Rebbe. And we're basically in a world where we feel Rebbe-less. Since the Baal Shem Tov came, there was always a Rebbe. Well, there was a Rebbe. A Rebbe means a godly man that through him people connected to the Eibishter in a very unique way. And there were many generations of Rabbeim, and there are still Chassidish Rebbes around, and those who find their connection through these tzaddikim. That's very meaningful, very special. For a great part of the Jewish world, the Lubavitcher Rebbe served as like a very, very, very significant tzaddik and a very, very big Rebbe. And then came Gimel Tammuz, in which the Rebbe passed away, at least to the eyes of ordinary people. And there are many Chassidim who are still very connected. All Chassidim are still connected, but there's some people who believe very, very strongly that the Rebbe is alive. And there are many people who feel that this is something that is not Jewish, or it's some kind of an idolatry kind of a belief. Or they think that by making fun of it, they're making fun of something worthy, something that they're right just because you can laugh at this crazy chassid who believes the Rebbe is alive. Let's take a look in Torah if such a thing is valid, if it's a belief that is valid according to Torah, or can one argue and say it's outside the pale of Torah thought? Everything Torah decides. We don't decide things based on our kishkes, what our stomach wants to say. We decide things, or even what our mind wants to say. We decide things based on Torah. What does Torah say? Now, obviously, the Torah is not talking explicitly about the Lubavitcher Rebbe, because the writings that we have are from a long time ago, and this is something that happened in recent history. But there's a really important idea which I do want to mention, and I spoke about it last week in the class too. One of the rich ideas that come about when you learn Chassidus is that you don't live in a once upon a time Yiddishkeit that happened 3,000 years ago. Chassidus brings Yiddishkeit, Torah, mitzvahs, godliness alive. And if it brings it to life, means that we are just as major players in the realization of God's plan, vast, eternal plan, as Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. It's not a once upon a time story, and we are just a bunch of schleppers holding on. We, today's days, even today's days, and to say even stronger, not even today's days, precisely today's days. There was never a more important generation. There was never people that were more extraordinary than we are in some way. And we're the ones who are here to finish everything that all the earlier generations have worked so hard. And therefore we can understand that the tzaddik that drives, and everybody has to agree that the Lubavitcher Rebbe is a powerful, powerful drive in the world for the embetterment of the world and for bringing a Mashiach. You have to be blind or simply completely ignorant, and I don't want to use not nice words, but you can understand, to not to appreciate the idea that the Lubavitcher Rebbe changed the face of the Jewish world, was responsible for the tshuva movement of millions of Jews doing tshuva across the world, or at least being connected to Torah, to Yiddishkeit, through the greatest Torah or spreading of Hafatzas HaTorah V'Yahadus network that has ever existed since the world was created. And therefore, this tzaddik is prominent. It's not like, okay, how can you say this about a Rebbe today when we say it about Moshe Rabbeinu or about David HaMelech or about Yaakov Avinu? That whole question comes from a very superficial understanding of Yiddishkeit, is that it once was. Why does it have to be once was? Did God get old? What happened? Why can't now be just as important as 1,000 years ago or 2,000 years ago? It comes from silliness. It doesn't come from, it becomes because sadly, a person doesn't feel his connection to the Eibishter, to God, as a very real thing. So therefore, I can't say that Judaism isn't real, because it's not real by me. So I have to say that it once was very real, and now, whatever. That's very silly. So therefore, if we find in Torah the idea that a tzaddik doesn't die, and particularly to certain tzaddikim, we find that they don't die, and let's try to understand what that means they don't die. Does that mean physically they don't die, or spiritually? If a person makes a claim that he believes that he's a chassid from the Lubavitcher Rebbe, and he believes that the Rebbe is alive physically, people dismiss this person as a lunatic. And that comes simply, as I'm going to show you, from clear ignorance. Now, it's okay, you can argue, and you can say, I don't think that the Lubavitcher Rebbe deserves to be in that category. That's your opinion. And the chassid who is connected believes that the Rebbe is in that category. The question is, does that category exist? Does the idea exist that someone who had a levaya and was interned and put into the ground, does that mean definitely that they died? Well, most people will say, of course they died. You're not from those fanatics. You know why I'm saying this? Because I get it. So many, you're a Lubavitcher? You believe the Rebbe is right? What's that? You know what it's coming from? People that live very, 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 very coarse. People that are very earthy and tangible. And your only reality is what you see. And something that you don't see to you doesn't exist. Then you can make fun of someone who, even if I don't see something, doesn't mean that that's not the reality. To me, the Torah, to a person who's connected in a deeper way, the Torah is more real to me than what I see with my eyes. So even if I see with my eyes a physical phenomenon, that doesn't have to be the truth. Just because the physical eye sees that. The Torah tells us a deeper truth about, not just about the spiritual, but about the physical. So therefore I want to share with you just, and you can be the judge, to see if the phenomenon exists at least, regarding Yaakov Avinu, regarding people that were alive even after they passed away. Which really means that obviously something happened when they passed, because before everybody can talk to them and regular, and then after they passed they were in a more concealed state, but it doesn't necessarily mean to have to say death the way we usually... So again, beginning with what Chazal say in general about tzaddikim, that righteous people don't die in the regular sense of the word. Tzaddikim af b'chayayim kruyim, af b'misasam kruyim chayim. Tzaddikim, even when they pass away, they're called alive. And that is said about all tzaddikim. Not speaking of the great super tzaddikim that are beyond. Okay. But then there is different levels. So let's share with you first regarding Yaakov Avinu, and then we're going to... The passage of the Gemara. The Gemara says that Reb Nachman and Rabbi Yitzchak have a yasve besudasa. Reb Nachman and Rabbi Yitzchak were sitting at a meal. And Reb Nachman said to Rabbi Yitzchak, speak Torah. Reb Nachman asked Rabbi Yitzchak, say something. And Rabbi Yitzchak answered him, we're not supposed to talk during the meal. Ein masichin besuda. We're not supposed to talk during the meal. Then, after they finished eating, Rabbi Yitzchak then said to Reb Nachman, this is what Rabbi Yochanan said. Yaakov Avinu lo imes. Yaakov didn't die. Shocking statement. Rabbi Yochanan says Yaakov Avinu didn't die. I'm sure Rabbi Yochanan would get the same thing like Lubavitchers get. Huh? Didn't die? You believe that? Well, maybe you go ahead and say Rabbi Yochanan is crazy. Chas v'sholom. In any case, since Rabbi Yochanan isn't crazy, Rabbi Yochanan said that Yaakov didn't die, so we shouldn't judge craziness so quickly. Anyways, I'm just getting excited. Let's get back. What does it say? Amalei, so they said to him, V'chi b'chdi safti saftanayu v'chantu chantayu. He said, hold it, what do you mean? They eulogized him. Did they do that for nothing? And they embalmed him. Did they do that for nothing? V'kavru kivrayu, they buried him in the earth. Well, everybody can go to Ma'aras HaMachpelah. You got Yaakov Avinu buried there. Amalei, he says to him, well, I have a pasuk. Mikrani Dorish, I have a pasuk that says that Yaakov is alive. Shenemar, it says a pasuk, va'ata al tira avdi Yaakov. Don't be afraid, my servant Yaakov. Ne'um Hashem, says Hashem. V'altechas Yisroel, and don't dread Yisroel. Ki hineni Mashiacha me'rachoik, I am coming to save you from afar, from a distance. Vezaracha, from you, Yaakov, don't be afraid, Yaakov, I'm going to help you from a distance. Vezaracha, and your children, me'eret shivyam, from the land of their captivity. The Eibishter says to Yaakov Avinu, I'm going to save you and your children from their land of their captivity. So in this verse, it's a pasuk in Yirmiyahu, Makishu Lizaroi. We do a comparison between Yaakov and his children. Ma'azarei b'chayim, just like the children that God is going to take out of exile. That's us, the last generation. The children, we are alive. Why? As Mefarshim say, those that are dead are not in captivity. To be in captivity in the world, only a living people can be in captivity. Those that passed away, they're not in captivity. So if it says, I will take your children from the land of captivity, it means they're alive. Afu b'chayim, and since it says Yaakov and his children, it's a sign that Yaakov is also alive. And as Mefarshim say, that Hashem is going to bring Yaakov to witness the redemption. Since he's alive, he doesn't even have to wait for Tchias HaMesim. He is alive. Hashem is going to bring him into the exiles, that he, with his physical eyes, should witness the Jewish people coming back, and he will come back together with them. Yaakov together with the Jewish children. Okay, that's the passage in the Talmud that Rashi is bringing over here. Okay. Now, what else do we find in other places regarding tzaddikim that perhaps didn't really pass away the way we think they passed away? So I'd like to share with you another interesting story. And this is about Rabbi Lazar, the son of Reb Shimon bar Yochai. Rabbi Lazar, the son of Reb Shimon bar Yochai. What does it say about Rabbi Lazar, the son of Reb Shimon bar Yochai? It says that Rabbi Lazar told his wife, okay, if you go to Maayon, you have Reb Shimon bar Yochai buried there together with his son, Rabbi Lazar. The Gemara has the most fascinating. This Rabbi Lazar bar Reb Shimon was one of the most fascinating characters there exists in amongst the sages, and the Talmud has such fascinating stories about him. In any case, he felt that the sages didn't get him. The sages didn't appreciate him, and that the sages thought that he was like a wayward son compared to who his father was. They felt that he was like a troublemaker. So Rabbi Lazar bar Reb Shimon says to his wife before he passes away, don't make a funeral. Don't bury me. Don't give me. The rabbis, they're not going to treat me well. They don't really like me. They don't get me. Don't make me. Leave me in the attic. That's what he says. Leave me in the attic. And don't be afraid. That's what he said. Leave me in the attic when I pass away, and don't be afraid. So what happened? So Reb Shmuel ben Nachmani says, Ishtoili Eimed Reb Yonason, the mother of Reb Yonason told Reb Shmuel bar Nachmani this story. The Ishtoile de Visiyu de Reb Lazar Reb Shimon. Okay? The mother of Reb Yonason was friends with the wife, with the widow of Reb Lazar bar Reb Shimon. So Reb Lazar bar Reb Shimon's wife, widow, tells this to Reb Yonason's mother. Ki Avasalikna, when he passed away, she said like this. I don't have exactly the number, but it wasn't less than 18 years, and it wasn't more than 22 years that he was in the attic. So between 18 and 22 years, he was not buried. She would go up, and she wanted to make sure that he's doing okay. She wanted to make sure that he doesn't have any lice in his hair. Okay? So she would look through his head. And if a hair would come out, when I was doing this, if a hair would come out, blood would come. Okay, obviously after such a long time, this shouldn't happen. And then it says one time, it's a little spooky story, I'm sorry for relating the story. One time she saw a worm coming out of his ear. So she got really scared. And she really felt terrible. So in the dream, he came to his wife, and he said, don't be afraid. It's not a sign of my body decaying. I'm doing just right. I am perfect. Because she didn't see any changes in his body. He was literally exactly the same like the day he passed. But this worm came out of her. He said, don't be afraid. He says, it's a punishment because one time I heard something disparaging being said about a rabbi, and I was quiet and I didn't protest. So therefore I have this punishment that I had this worm come out of my ear. That's it. Anyways, but this is the amazing thing. Whenever two people needed, and then it became like the thing in the town that people knew. Whenever two people had a dispute, an argument, they would come downstairs to the house and stand by the entrance of the house, and both litigants would state their claims. Why against one against the other or whatever. They would have their argument. And then they would hear a voice from the attic that would give them a verdict. He would paskin. They heard Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon as he was the rabbi of the town. Before, he continued being the rabbi of the town for 18 to 22 years after his passing from the attic. Now, when did it stop? It stopped because the rabbis one day heard a neighbor getting upset at his wife, at the widow of Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon, and he said to her, "You should be like your husband who's never getting buried." So the rabbi said, "Oh, that means that people are shaming the tzaddik that he's not been buried, so they have to bury him." It's a whole story. The people in the city didn't want to let him get taken out of the city because as long as he was in the city, there never came a wild beast into the town. They used to have problems with animals, but that they were safe. So they had to sneak him out from the attic on Erev Yom Kippur when the people of the town were so busy, didn't realize the rabbi sent up a few people to take him out, and they took him to Maayon where Reb Shimon Bar Yochai was buried, and they buried him. But this is one of the places where you see in the Talmud that you have someone for 22 years after he passed away, and he's paskening. Now here's another thing which we need to consider, and that is the halacha is Torah loy b'shamayim. The Torah is not in heaven. You're not allowed to pasken halacha. We're not allowed to give a Torah verdict, a halachic opinion from heaven. That means if someone is a tzaddik and he can communicate with souls in heaven and he says, "I don't know what the halacha is, but let me contact the Rambam and see what the Rambam says," the halacha is that's not a valid halacha. The only way it's a valid halacha is from someone who's paskening a halacha down here in this world. So how can Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon pasken if he passed away already? So therefore we have to say that he still was in his body. I mean, there was something of the passing, but he didn't depart from the body to the point that we should say that he's not a living being down here in this world. He can still pasken a shayla. This is what with Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon. Now we move on to another past story in the Talmud. And this is a story about, where is this? This is Masechtas Ksubas. Fascinating. This is a story about Rabbeinu HaKadosh, Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi, Rabbeinu HaKadosh, the author of the Mishnah. So the Gemara says about the author of the Mishnah, Rabbeinu HaKadosh, he said that you should always leave a candle burning in his place. This is before he passed away. And the table should be set. His seat should always be by the table. And everything should be left exactly like when he was alive. Don't mess. A person passes away, they can make renovations, change around the house. He said, leave everything the way it is, don't touch. Why? What do you care? Why should I have my seat staying here? My time, what's the reason? So the Gemara says, Kol by Shimsha v'asa lebeisei, every Friday night, after Rabbeinu HaKadosh Rebbe passed away, he would come to his house and he made kiddush for his wife and the family. Okay? Every Friday night, Rabbeinu HaKadosh arrived and he made kiddush for his wife and his family. Asa shavavta. So one time a neighbor needed salt, or she needed a wine opener, or I don't know, what are the things that people go ask their neighbor Friday night for? You need something. So a neighbor happened to come, and she was making a ruckus by the door. So the maidservant said, "Shh, quiet, Rebbe is here." I go, "Stop the hollering. We have. So when Rebbe heard that it's getting out in the street, now that the neighbor knows, Rebbe stopped coming. And he said, "I'm not coming again." The reason why he stopped coming, and it's not because it's a problem with public knowledge. You know what the only problem is? Rebbe said that it would give a bad name on all the other tzaddikim. What people would say that the other tzaddikim are not such great tzaddikim like Rabbeinu HaKadosh from the earlier generations. What's the proof? Rebbe is able to come down here physically and he never died. He's physically able to come back into his body. And the other tzaddikim can't come back into their body. And therefore Rebbe felt that this would make this would make other tzaddikim look of lesser stature than him. So therefore he stopped coming. Now interesting. In Gilyon HaShas from Rabbi Akiva Eger, okay, so don't think this is just a Chassidic thing. In Gilyon HaShas from Rabbi Akiva Eger, right? What does it say over here? He brings that when Rebbe came, he brings in the name of Sefer Chassidim. Because here you have also a problem. It's not just that Rebbe came and they were able to see him, they had a vision, that's amazing. But then you can say it's spiritual. The problem is that someone who is exempt from a mitzvah cannot do the mitzvah on behalf of someone else. That's the halacha. A child is allowed to make kiddush. A minor, he's allowed to make kiddush for himself. He can't make kiddush for an adult. If, let's say, a husband goes out of town and just the mother is there with her boys, and the mother doesn't want to make kiddush. So she has her 11 years old who makes kiddush with his tati every Shabbos, a beautiful kiddush. He's going to make kiddush. It's not going to work. It's not going to work for the mother. It's not going to work for the older girls that are over bas mitzvah. They cannot fulfill their obligation with their younger 10-year-old brother because someone who's not obligated in a mitzvah cannot fulfill and execute the obligation for those that are obligated in the mitzvah. Now the halacha is that mesim, someone who's dead, is chavshi min ha-mitzvahs. The reason why you're not allowed to go on a cemetery with tefillin on or dangling your tzitzis out in the open or things like that, because you're teasing the dead. Because the moment the person leaves the body, they can't do a mitzvah anymore. The obligation of mitzvahs depart. Lo yamesim yahalaluka. The dead cannot do mitzvahs. Only the living can do a mitzvah. So now the question is, Rebbe passed away halachically, clinically. I like the chachamim, you know. Clinically dead. Rebbe was clinically dead. No, doctor said so. He got a death certificate signed by the hospital. So halachically he's dead. Chas v'shalom. If that's the case, how can he make kiddush? Good question, no? Anyways, the Sefer Chassidim says, he came dressed in his Shabbos clothing, lavish b'Shabbos upoiter es rabim b'kiddush, and he was able to make kiddush for them, v'loy keshar mesim, not like other dead, like the other deceased. Ma she mesim shehem chafeshim b'mitzvahs, ki tzadikim chayim, because tzadikim are alive, upotre b'kiddush, and he can pater in kiddush. In other words, to such a degree we say that Rabbeinu HaKadosh was alive, was to the thing that halachically he's not exempt from mitzvahs. So he can make kiddush and make kiddush for his family, and they can fulfill the mitzvah. Pretty strong. So that's another Gemara. Now, on this idea, going back to the passage regarding to Yaakov Avinu, just to show you how many layers and layers this exists. This explicit statement that a tzaddik didn't die says about Yaakov Avinu. Yaakov Avinu lo meis. What's the chiddush? What's the novelty? I just showed you that there are other tzaddikim in which we say by them as well that they don't die. What's the chiddush by Yaakov? So interesting. The Maharsha, one of the great commentators on Talmud, and particularly the passages of Talmud in the realm of Agadata, the midrashic kind of passages of the Talmud, the Maharsha learns that when it says that Yaakov is alive, lo meis, it means benefesh. He says it's possible to learn it physically, that he's physically alive. It's possible to learn it spiritual. And he derives from whatever, back and forth, his pirush is that it means he is spiritually alive. Physically he died. Spiritually he is alive. That's what the Maharsha learns. And I would be wrong not to tell you that there are other Mefarshim who learn that way. Not everybody learns that this Gemara has to be understood in the literal sense regarding the physical body, that the physical body is alive. It's more of a spiritual thing. So says the Maharsha. Rashi, however, both in Chumash, Rashi doesn't say anything. Rashi just quotes pure Yaakov Avinu loy meis. But Rashi in Gemara, when he quotes this passage of the Talmud, when it says that he didn't die, Elachai hu li'olam. First of all, Rashi says he lives. By Rebbe, you can say how long, as long as he came back to make Kiddush. By Reb Elazar, Reb Shimon, until they put him in the Reb Shimon by Yochai in Iran, until that time he was alive. Afterwards, he in the end, he had to pass away. Rashi says about Yaakov Avinu, he lives forever. Forever. But then, on the pasuk where the Gemara answers, when the Gemara says, well, they buried him. So the Gemara answers, Mikrani Doirish, I darshan a pasuk. I have a pasuk. So Rashi says, V'hai dechanti chantayu. So why did they embalm him? So Rashi says, Svurim haya shemeis. They thought he died. So they were embalming him. They were doing things in his body, and they thought he's dead, but he's not dead. In other words, according to their medical gadgets that they used in order to gauge life and death, they felt the heartbeat. They felt there was no pulse. They had all the reason to pronounce him dead. That's what it looked like. And Rashi says it a second time. Afu b'chayim sheyavienu begoyla. That's what I told you earlier. That Hashem will bring him to the golus kedei ligoy lesbanav, to redeem his children. Le'einav, in front. Not that Hashem will redeem his children in front of his eyes. And Rashi says an interesting thing. Do you know by Kriyas Yamsuf it says Vayar Yisroel es hayad hagdola, that Israel saw God's mighty hand. Rashi says when it says Vayar Yisroel es hayad hagdola, the great hand that Hashem did in Mitzrayim, Rashi says Vayar Yisroel is referring to Yaakov Avinu. Yaakov Avinu was standing there amongst the Jewish people. No one saw him, but he was there. And he witnessed Kriyas Yamsuf, and he saw the great hand. Yisroel is not the Jewish people. Yisroel is Yaakov, who's called Yisroel. He was brought. V'darshinan Yisroel Saba. We learned with darshan, it means our grandfather Yisroel. They went and they embalmed him. Nidma lehem shemes. It appeared to them that he died. But he was alive. Okay. It's good for Rashi, isn't it not good for me and for you? Rashi is okay with learning that physically Yaakov is alive. He appears to have died, but he didn't die literally. I want to share with you, however, what other Mefarshim say. So we get a good picture and understand this on various different levels. So we have Ramban. Okay, you have Rashi. Let's see what Nachmanides says. Nachmanides over here on the pasuk, Vayigva v'Yosef, and he brings what Rashi says. It doesn't say death, but then he asks a question. But Yaakov himself said, "I'm going to die." Hine anoichi meis. Yaakov says, "I'm going to die." V'hoya lekimi machem. Hashem will be with you. So if Yaakov is not going to die, how come Yaakov said he's going to die? And also, so Rashi says an interesting thing. Not Rashi, Nachmanides, Ramban. He says, Ilu lo yadahu benafshay. Maybe he himself didn't know that he wasn't going to die. He thought that he himself did not know that this was going to happen, that he wasn't going to die. So that's why he said he's going to die, but in the end he didn't. Or he didn't want to be arrogant. Everybody else dies. It's pretty arrogant if you say, I'm not dying. So therefore he didn't want to say that about himself. But really he didn't. There's another pasuk, and this is great. It says the brothers saw Vayiru Achai Yosef. The brothers saw Kimei Saviam, that their father died. Their brothers saw that he died. So it says clearly that he died. Hear these words of Nachmanides. Ki lahem mesu, to them he died. To them he died. But that was not to himself. Meaning, to their experience, he was dead. Or they didn't know. Or maybe, Ramban seems to be saying two things. Possible that to them he really died, but to himself he was alive. Or they didn't know, just like we said earlier, that like Rashi says, they didn't know, they thought that he died. What does this mean? Then the Ramban says, but what does this mean? He says, Nafshay tzadikim tzurois b'tzroi rachayim. The souls of tzaddikim are wrapped in the wrapping of life. They remain very, 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 very alive. And therefore these souls are able to come down and hover over the body. And I don't know what this next line of Nachmanides means. Loiveshes levusha hasheni. She dresses her second garment. Shaloyav shitena aruma, that she shouldn't be naked. Exactly what this means in Ramban. I didn't get enough time to really research this, what he means. Oy tislabish leitim mizumanos. That's what he means. I get it. Either it never becomes undressed from the body, that the neshama should be without a body, kiyakui, or in other words, it's hovering by the body. Either it never gets undressed from the body, it remains there, or it's close enough that it can dress itself in the body whenever it be itim mizumanos at certain times. Like who? Like Rebbe. So he's learning like this. By Yaakov Avinu, the neshama is hovering over the body and enclothing itself in the body all the time. By the others, it's close enough to the body that it could descend into the body when at certain times. Not always. Ramban. But you see clearly from Ramban as well that we're not talking about a purely spiritual meaning of the tzaddik being alive. We're talking about the connection of the body, of the soul to the body, even after their passing. Now let's take Rabbeinu Bachaya. Rabbeinu Bachaya is fascinating. Okay? Rabbeinu Bachaya brings two meanings. He asks the question, but they buried him, and Rabbeinu Bachaya says two things. Avo pirush loy meis, the pirush of not dying, loy toam tamisa. Not that he didn't die. He just did not go through the horror of dying. In other words, the passage from life to death is not the most comfortable experience. That's called the taste of death. It's the taste of the angel of death. Yaakov Avinu did not experience that, but that doesn't mean that the effect of death didn't happen, that his neshama went out. That's his first pirush. Or he says, loy meis means, ki nafshel sheyakov oisemerachefes al gufoy, his nefesh remains hovering over his body, tamid, all the time, l'toykef kedushasai, because he's so holy, because the body is so holy. So usually, the soul gets ejected from the body, because the body is not holy enough. And the body needs to be purified until the soul can come back by Tchias HaMesim. But when someone has such a holy body, like Yaakov Avinu, so the neshama gravitates to the body all the time. If you ever have a chance, look in Medrash Rabbah, in the end of Zois HaBracha, talking about the passing of Moshe Rabbeinu. It's one of the most fascinating things I've ever read. It discusses how Moshe's neshama has an argument with God. God is trying to chase Moshe's neshama out of his body, and Moshe's neshama doesn't want to go. And God says, I'm going to take you and I'm going to bring you up to the highest, most beautiful, holiest place, right beneath my throne. And it's impossible. I mean, if you don't see this medrash with your own eyes, it's unbelievable. The medrash that says that Moshe Rabbeinu's neshama tells God, I don't want to go under your throne. I think it's holier in Moshe's body. Do you understand something like that? The neshama of Moshe says it's holier in this body than it is under your throne. Because from beneath your throne, two angels came down, and they became big sinners, and Moshe Rabbeinu's neshama came down in this body, and never did he ever do the tiniest sin in anything. So you see, this body is holy. I love it over here. And guess what? You know how Hashem gets the neshama out of the body? Hashem sees that arguing won't work. He kissed him and he just took the soul. Again, and by Moshe it also says that he didn't die. But I'm just telling you that this bond between neshama and guf, when someone has a holy guf, the neshama wants to stay with the body. The Rabbeinu Bechaya says, other souls of tzaddikim, she'einam b'madreges hakadusha kamayu, that are not in such a holy level like Yaakov Avinu. Chayzeres l'shar shel le'ikron. Those neshamas go back. But v'kiven sha'alu, once they go up, lo yardu, they don't come down. That's a Gemara in Masechtas Shabbos. The Gemara says about the neshama, after 12 months, it goes up, it doesn't come down anymore. And Tosfos asked the question, the Avos we find, the Gemara also tells a story about a person that was going to Maris Machpelah, and he came to the caver of Avram Avinu, and they met Eliezer there, and he said, Avram and Sarah are busy now. She's combing his hair. So another story. So the Gemara, so Tosfos says, even though the neshama goes up and doesn't come down, from time to time they do come down. Okay, so here he's quoting that thing. He says that might be true even by Avram and Yitzchak. But Yaakov, l'kedushas gufa yumalasai, because he's so holy. His neshama goes up and down all the time, and such a koyach, such an unbelievable power is only for the real holy ones. Only those who are the unique ones of the generation. Like Rebbe. Very unique people. Their holiness of their body is so great that the neshama hovers above them all the time. And he brings the story of Rebbe that I mentioned to you earlier. And, okay. And then he explains why Yaakov is so much holier than Avram and Yitzchak. That Avram and Yitzchak, because Yaakov, not because of his own virtue, but because he has all the holiness of Avram, then he has all the holiness of Yitzchak, and then he has, on top of them, he has the holiness of Yaakov. That triple Kedusha makes his body so holy that dafka by him, not by Avram, but Yitzchak, we say that the neshama remains by the body all the time. Now, but then he goes ahead, he explains it Kabbalistically, but then he says something also very interesting. He concludes, he says that Lefikach Yaakov Avinu loy meis, Yaakov didn't die. Ach nishar kayam, he remains existing. Hear these words. Beguf ubenefesh, in his body and in his soul. And guess what he says? But here's it. He defines that there's two bodies, that we all have two bodies. There is the physical body, the ones that we can touch, the physical. That's one body. And then he says there is a more metaphysical body. It's a body. It's physical, but very, very refined. So it's between spirit and physical. He says that's the body that we're talking about remains alive. So therefore, look at this. Haguf hazehu, haguf hasheni. It's the second body. Hadak. It's a very shaboya nefesh mislabeshes betzurais haguf. In other words, the neshama itself is completely an abstract spiritual concept. And when a soul has to come down in a body, it doesn't just immediately from its spiritual concept directly connect to a body. The gap is too big. So the neshama is first enclosed in a tsura, in a spiritual design of a body, and that's called the refined body. And then from there, it encloses itself in the corporal body. But he says this neshama is very edel, this body, very, very refined, but it has a mamish. It's not purely spiritual. It has substance. It's very, very fine. And therefore, it can then enclose itself in the physical body only at certain times. In other words, it remains in one enclosement. It doesn't always go into the second enclosement, but at certain times, it can actually enclose itself in the physical body. Erev Shabbos la'erev Shabbos. That was like by Rebbe, Erev Shabbos or Yom Kippur. And this body and soul of the tzaddikim Mishotet ba'olam. What's the word mishotet? It flies. It soars across the world. B'shlichase shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu, in the shlichus of Hashem, u'misra'el l'mishu chafetz boi, and it makes itself visible to the one that it wants to show itself to. That's why we have tzaddikim. And by the way, you should know, by the Chabad Rabbeim, there is a constant, you have it in their writings. You see it in the previous Chabad Rebbe writes about it all the times, and you have it where they keep on writing, yesterday my father was by me, yesterday my grandfather was by me, the other day the Baal Shem Tov came and I spoke to him and I saw him and the Baal Shem Tov was standing and I chazed the mimer before him and then he gave me an explanation on the mimer. I mean, to them this was everyday occurrences that they spoke to their predecessors, to the Rabbeim. How many times did the Lubavitcher Rebbe return from his father-in-law's ohel, where he went to the gravesite, and he would say, the Rebbe the Shver told me to give over, or the Rebbe, that means he communicated with him. He's told him, he spoke to him. Why? He's saying over here, the Rabbeinu Bachaya says it, really big tzaddikim. The neshamas remain enclosed in a physical but very refined guf, and that reveals itself to tzaddikim from time to time. So he says the first body, it means the physical, the earthy body, that was embalmed, and that was put in the ground. Okay, this is his idea, Rabbeinu Bachaya. So what do we have from Rabbeinu Bachaya? That tzaddikim remain alive, and by Yaakov Avinu, more than by all other tzaddikim, alive in spirit and in the guf. But this that we say that the guf is alive, we mean a more edel, more refined guf. But even that can enclose itself in the physical guf. That's what it seems like from his words, because that's what I would mean when Rabbeinu HaKadosh came by Kiddush, that he came in a way that even the maidservant saw it. So obviously it doesn't mean in his refined body, it dressed itself in its coat, not only in its sweater, but also in its coat. You understand what I'm saying? Also in the physical body, mamish. So that is this other beer. And now what I'd like to share with you is one last explanation. And this is from the Alshech HaKadosh. Okay? The Alshech HaKadosh was one of the great Mefarshim on Chumash, Al Pidrush, lived in the 1500s, so we're talking about 500 years ago, lived at the same time of the Holy Ari in the city of Tzfas. He's from the few people that we refer to as HaKadosh, the Holy One. Okay? So let me share with you what the Alshech says regarding this matter of Yaakov Avinu Loi Meis, that Yaakov doesn't die. He's the most explicit. It's amazing. Different than Rabbeinu Bachaya. Rabbeinu Bachaya says that when Yaakov doesn't die, he's enclosed in what? In a body all the time. But it's a more subliminal body. It's a higher body. What does he say? He wants to differentiate like this. He brings the question, but he points out something really fascinating. He says every time it mentions death by Yaakov, it doesn't mention death by Yaakov. It mentions death by the name Yisroel. Vayikruvu Yisroel Lamos. It says, Vayoyme Yisroel El Yosef, Hine Anoichi Meis. Vayoyme Yisroel Amusa Aphapoam. So it mentions the name Yisroel regarding what? It mentions the name Yisroel. Every time it mentions Yaakov Avinu passing, it mentions the name Yisroel. But by Yaakov, it never says dying. Now Yaakov has two names, Yisroel and Yaakov. So death is mentioned by Yisroel, but not by Yaakov. So the Alshech says it's a strange thing, because Yisroel is a higher name. So we would have to say like this, that Yisroel died, but Yaakov never died. And that's what Chazal say, Yaakov Loi Meis. Yaakov didn't die. He says even more. The sages say Yaakov Avinu Loi Meis. Yaakov, our father, didn't die. What's the emphasis? All of Yaakov's children he says everybody. You have to say Binyamin too, I guess. All of Yaakov's children were born to him before he got the name Yisroel. His official name change to become Yisroel happened after he had his children. After, the Malach said to him, you will be Yisroel earlier, but I think the final Hashem telling him that your name is after Binyamin was born. So at that time, that means that when we, his children, are born, our father is Yaakov. When he fathered us, he was Yaakov, he wasn't Yisroel. That's the meaning. Yaakov Avinu lo imes. Yaakov, as he is our father. How is he our father? He's our father with the name Yaakov. That didn't die. But Yisroel did die. It's a chiddush. But he said it doesn't make any sense. Yisroel is a higher level. So he explains it's fascinating. He says, what's the meaning of death? Death means the separation of body from soul. The departure. When the soul departs from the body, that's called death. He says the name Yisroel came to Yaakov Avinu as a result of his hard work. His hard work. Hashem said to him, you overcame all your adversaries. You overcame all the challenges, and therefore you're called Yisroel. So Yisroel was his personal achievements. He was crowned with extra achievements. And as a result of that, he drew down a higher spiritual light upon his body. That went away when he died. That did go away. But his initial godliness that he had in his neshama, that he was born with, that he was called Yaakov, that level of kedusha and that level of holiness never departed his body at all. Now, to what degree? Hear what the Alshich says. Shehu al b'chinas Yaakov. Okay, here we are. V'chol oisei hakoyach. Because when you're going to argue, you're going to say, okay, what does he mean he didn't die? Something, the body is a little bit alive. No, what does the Alshich say? V'chol oisei hakoyach nishar shakua b'psaroi. In his flesh, the entire koyach of his nefesh remains enclosed, embedded, b'psaroi, in his flesh. Not in the spiritual body that Rabbeinu Bachaya is talking about. In the flesh. Kigam, even though, he says, sheyeser tzadikim nikroim yeshenei afar. He says, even though we say that other tzaddikim are called those who sleep in the ground, that means we never say on a tzaddik he died. Tzaddikim don't die. If anything, they went to take a nap. Yeshenei afar. They sleep in the ground. And that's about all the tzaddikim. V'loi meisen be'etzem, they're not essentially dead. Like we see from Rabbeinu HaKadosh, he brings, that he said Kiddush in his house, B'chol Leil Shabbos. V'Reb Elazar b'Reb Shimon, remember I brought you the first story, Shayashayfet es Yisroel, that he judged the Jewish people, Esrim v'shtayim shanim, 22 years, B'toy Chedrai, in his room, Achar Silukai, after his passing. V'Rab Acha bar Yashio is another one, Shadibarim Rab Nachman, who spoke to Rab Nachman after he passed, Mitoich Kvurasi, from his grave. But here what he differentiates, he says Yaakov is much stronger than everyone else. Hine kol eila, even though by them it says that they're only napping, they're only sleeping. Hine kol eila lo yehoya behem rak koyach mama hanefesh. Most of the neshama left, only the nefesh remains. You know, there's nefesh, ruach, neshama. So the nefesh remained, but the ruach and the neshama departed. Ach loy me ruach u'neshama. Ki nistalku mehem, they went away. Yeser aleim Yaakov. Yaakov is greater than all of them. Ki akoil hoyaboy kemedubar. By him, everything is exactly the same. That's why, because everything remained. Ki nisharim boy kol koichos nafshoy. All the koiches of Yaakov's nefesh, asher hoyaboy b'chayav, that were there during his life. And here's an amazing thing. That's why when they took Yaakov to bury him, Yaakov gave particular instructions. They carried him in the same way the Jewish people carried the Mishkan. Set up, the tribes carried, that when they carried the Mishkan, the Levium carried, but the whole setup was the Degalim on the sides, which Shvatim. Yaakov set up his sons exactly that way. Why? If it's just the body, it's just the body. No, Yaakov is fully alive. They're carrying Yaakov Avinu. Al Kain Sa'u B'Kedusha Al Seder Hadgalim. in that level. And that's why he says the Gemara doesn't ask from the psukim. When the Gemara says they buried him and they embalmed him, the Gemara, why does the Gemara ask that as a question? The Gemara could have asked the question to say beferish that he died. He says because those psukim say by Yisroel. There's no pasuk by Yaakov because Yisroel passed away, but not Yaakov. Anyways, if so, he says, and this gets a little. The question is when they would embalm. He talks about embalming. It's a science that the doctors would do, and part of that medical procedure is to take out the kishkis, because if you leave the kishkis in the body, and the dead body, then it's obviously you can't preserve the body that way. So you have to take out the kishkis and at least whatever. So by Yaakov Avinu did they do that? So he proves from the psukim later that even though they gave him over to the doctors, they never did that to his body. And the reason is because Yosef knew that his father never died. It actually says so. It says that after Yaakov passed away, the pasuk says that Yosef fell on his father and he kissed him and he cried. Kissing is not something you do to a dead body, because there's no one to receive. There's no one there, no one home. So what's the kiss to? And Yosef wasn't just an emotional being that he lost it when his father died. He emotionally couldn't contain himself, so he fell on his father and he kissed him. Because Yosef knew that his father is not dead. It looked that way, but he's not that way. In any case, that's the chiddush. That's the way the Alshich learns. So again, what do we have over here, just to summarize? There is such a concept that a tzaddik doesn't pass away. And it doesn't only mean spiritual. It can even mean, there are opinions that learn it spiritual. But there are enough serious authorities from Ramban, Rabbeinu Bechaya, Rashi, Alshich, Sefer HaChasidim, Rabbi Kiva Eger who brings it, and others, where it's perfectly okay. Now, obviously, we don't say that about every person. We appreciate and we understand, like the Alshich HaKadosh says, it's only by Yechidei Segula, the greatest of their generation. No. I don't see why that's a problem for people say that on the Rebbe as the great person of the generation who saved the generation from assimilation, turned around the tide of. There's so much. I'm not making a commemoration now or something to the Rebbe. That's not my Indian. I'm just saying that it's not outside of the pale of Judaism to believe that way and to be certain that way. And the emes is, if you appreciate what Amunah is, true Amunah is not an intellect. True Amunah is an neshama senses something. The Maral explains that Amunah is, he says the difference between Seichel and Amunah is, in intellect, because your mind convinces you of a certain phenomenon, that establishes its reality. It exists because your mind established it. In Amunah, it's the opposite. Because it is, that's why you believe it. In other words, the truth of whatever it is shining into you, and that's why you are believing in it. It's like the idea that the true, pure idea of Amunah and Hashem is not because intellectual. It's because the Eibishter's emes is shining in your neshama. So for people that don't appreciate the concept of a hiskashrus, of a bonding between a Rebbe and a Chassid, okay, so you don't appreciate it. But for those who do know what means Rebbe Chassid and how deep that bond is, and as it says last week in the parsha, v'nafshoy kshura b'nafshoy, one soul is bound up with the other soul. So if the Chassid believes without a shadow of a doubt that the Rebbe is alive, and for some reason it's not enough for this person that he's alive spiritually, but he's alive physically, and that doesn't mean that whatever happened, you're going to show him photographs of Gimel Tammuz, Tafshin Nun Dalet, and say, oh, look, there's a funeral. I know, but Yaakov Avinu, there also was a funeral. And all those things. And you know what? And yet Chazal say, loy meis. The main thing is, and I really wanted to explain all of this Kabbalistically as well. There's a fascinating piece and discussion of the Lubavitcher Rebbe's father, Rabbi Levi Yitzchak, on this whole passage of the Gemara, on this whole dialogue. I'm just going to, I'll say just a little tidbit, and that's it, and just a little nugget. He says this came about from Rabbi Yitzchak and Rabbi Nachman that was sitting by a meal. He says the meal that they were sitting by, he proves it from many different things, was Shabbos Shalashudis. It was the third meal. It's the mincha, the meal that comes by mincha time. And he says that's why Rabbi Yitzchak and Rabbi Nachman are sitting together, because Yitzchak is the one who instituted mincha. And Nachman has the letters mincha inside of him. Mincha and Nachman. So Yitzchak and they're sitting by the meal. And this meal is the meal of Yaakov Avinu, because the first meal of Shabbos corresponds to Avram, the second meal corresponds to Yitzchak, and the third meal corresponds to Yaakov. And by Yaakov Avinu we say, "V'chalticha nachlas Yaakov avicha," that I will. The Zohar, the pasuk says, "I will give you to eat the nachla of Yaakov." Now, it was precisely at this meal where the discussion came up, where he told him Divrei Torah that Yaakov didn't die. Why? Because Rabbi Nachman said to Rabbi Yitzchak, "Lei mamar milsa," say something, say a word. In Aramaic, the word milsa means a word. Say something. Now, the word milsa, if you rearrange the letters, is a lo mace, didn't die. That's why when he responded, he said, say a word. He said, let me give you a milsa. Loi mace, Yaakov didn't die. Now, why was this so important that it has to be said during that time? Mincha in general is a time of judgments. It's the most severest time of the day. It's the time of dinim. Yitzchak is judgment. Sun is going down. Intensification of all the forces of darkness in the world is by mincha time. It's a tough time. Shabbos by mincha, we emphasize, lays dinim, there's no judgments. You say B'nai Achol over there. All the forces of darkness are kicked out. There's no judgments at all. But yet we find that by Shabbos by mincha, 3 tzaddikim passed away. Shabbos by mincha. Who are the 3 tzaddikim who passed away by Shabbos by mincha? The 3 tzaddikim are Yosef HaTzadik was the first one. The Zohar says passed away by Shabbos by mincha. Moshe Rabbeinu and David HaMelech. 3 tzaddikim passed away by Shabbos by mincha. That's why by mincha by Shabbos we say 3 times Tzidkascha. Tzidkascha, because we're saying that Hashem is righteous. The reason we're saying 3 times Tzidkascha, it's referring to these 3 tzaddikim who passed away by Shabbos by mincha. Now if you take the gematria of Yosef, Moshe, and David, right now I don't have the book open in front of me to tell you exactly what the gematria is. Yosef, here it is. Yosef, Moshe, and David. Moshe is 345, Yosef is 156, David is 14. Add them up together, it's 515. And when was it? By mincha. 5 times the word mincha is also 515. Why mincha 5 times? What does mincha have to do with 5 times mincha? Mincha is gematria 103. 5 times 103 is 515. Same like Moshe, Yosef, and David, who all 3 died by Shabbos by mincha. What's the connection? You know there's a korban that's called a korban mincha. Besides for our tfilas mincha, there's a korban called a korban mincha. It's a meal offering. So you look in halacha, you look in Torah, there are 5 different ways to make a korban mincha. Different ingredients of how you make a korban mincha. If you go to Mensch, they have all the 5 different types. I'm just kidding. So the 5 different minchas. And therefore, they passed away. The names are gematria. Anyways, because the word tzaddikim who passed away by Mincha, Shabbos by Mincha, it therefore might occur to someone that Yaakov Avinu also passed away, especially that this is Sudas Yaakov. And we refer to the Sud as Nachalas Yaakov. Nachalas means an inheritance. So it could occur to someone that Yaakov Avinu did die. So therefore he has to say, Yaakov lo meis. Why? Why Dafka Yaakov lo meis? Because Yaakov is truth. Titain emes le Yaakov. And truth is eternal. Truth is forever. Let's take a look at the word emes le Yaakov. If you look at the word titain emes le Yaakov, let's leave out the word titain. Let's look at the word emes le Yaakov. You rearrange the letters. Emes le Yaakov is Yaakov lo emes. Yaakov didn't die. The truth of Yaakov is Yaakov doesn't die. Anyways, he goes on and on and on and on, and literally it's as I once told you that the experience of learning Rabbi Levi Yitzchak's Torah is literally like going to an amusement park and enjoying all the rides that there are. It's thrilling, but you have to bring along a calculator, and if you have a calculator and you're ready to go on a thing, but bottom line is there's so much more than our silly eye sees and recognize. So let's just appreciate that and know that, and as a result, and respect the amunah of Yidden, of simple Yidden, that the amunah of Yidden is real and emes. May Hashem bless us that we should already see Yaakov Avinu, and he should see us emerging from the Golus, and we should see already the full and complete redemption, and it should be already the ultimate Vayechi Yaakov, that Yaakov is alive, and all of us can see. And not only is he alive, but he makes us all fully alive with the coming of Mashiach, and may we see it now, and now.